Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. I'm your host, Victor, and on this podcast, we're watching a streaming favorite going week to week, breaking it down, providing some commentary, and some other recommendations along the way. In today's episode, we are discussing the 12th episode of The Pitt. The shift is ending for our ER doctors, but there are 3 more episodes to go. Some characters like Joy are out the door at the 12-hour mark. For me, I think that's very healthy. But others we know are going to, so these storylines themselves are going to linger. On the podcast, we continue to break down The Pitt for 3 more episodes, as I mentioned. We have 3 more episodes of DTF St. Louis. Expect the next episode of that, my conversation with Sona, on Monday. And then Monday night, the season finale of Paradise. A huge twist on that show if you haven't caught up with it last week. And I had this feeling, as I mentioned with Darren in those conversations, that that our podcast was not going to take off the way it did last year around that show. But last week's episode with that big twist has driven a lot of eyes to our podcast. So if you're new to the podcast, welcome. And I hope you'll continue to watch other shows with us in the future as well. So the season finale of that. In the near future, we have the premiere of Your Friends and Neighbors. We'll be discussing Euphoria here on the podcast once DTF St. Louis wraps up, and a whole bunch of other April premieres, which we'll be previewing in the upcoming episodes. So make sure you subscribe so you know when those episodes become available. With that out of the way, let's get into that conversation. So we're recording a little late today because we have some company, your best friend visiting with her daughter, and they were listening to our Pitt coverage.
On their way down
On
here.
the way down.
I was so impressed by that.
And then they didn't speak to us after they got here. They're probably tired of listening to us talk. So they're like,
no, that's not true.
No, they've been lovely.
The funniest part is I have known my friend since I was 1 year old, and I'm old now. And she's like, my God, I didn't know you knew all those big words. You're so smart.
But she hasn't heard you talk medicine stuff?
No, we try not to talk medicine because she gets some people just get grossed out. So minimal medical stories have been exchanged in our time.
The irony here, of course, the opposite is I never knew what this terminology means or whatever, but you, not only do you talk on the phone all the time and I overhear you, but my wife, Kim, dictates all her text messages, all her notes. So she is constantly dictating her medical notes into her phone, basically. So when I listen to The Pitt, it's I know what they're talking about most of the time. I can only imagine the average viewer is probably really confused sometimes. And I'm I know what that means.
Victor is very astute if you've just picked up on medical terminology from listening to me dictate into my phone.
It is incessant.
Borderline genius.
It is incessant. So I had to. It's my coping mechanism.
You're let me look up what ectomy and otomy and all these.
I know all the Latin terminology. All right, Kim. So we get to hour 12 of The Pitt. This is the shift cutover. And the show is surprising us in different ways. Last season, of course, at this point in time, there's utter chaos. And I was wondering, how are they going to extend this season to past the 12-hour mark? And of course, this is probably surprising to all the viewers, giving us a more realistic transition between one shift and another. And I can speak to the fact that when you were working in trauma, that you never worked a 12-hour shift. You always had a longer shift. So there is the babysitting of your existing patients and the handover and chit-chatting with your you can't believe how crazy this day was. So it seems to me that we are in this in-between space. And instead of being utter chaos, it seems like everything's actually pretty calm because you probably have twice the staff you normally need to handle these number of cases. So this is a pretty quiet episode as far as the chaos of the emergencies. However, and this is my follow-up question to you as well, is that we see that everybody is falling apart and because it's the end of shift. So I'm curious, in your experience, what is it like in this period of time when you're handing over your cases to the next shift coming in? And of course, maybe just seeing friends and, hey, how are you? And catching up. But of course, that extends your day. But also, is this kind of where the weight of the day kind of takes its toll on you?
I don't think the weight of the day takes its toll at that time because you're now into hour 12, 13. So you're I absolutely need to get out of here. I'm going to sign out to the person taking over for me. And when I did trauma, if there were, active trauma patients in the trauma bay, you'd physically take them to the patients and be like, here's this patient, blah, blah, blah. We're waiting for CAT scan. This patient is waiting for a bed upstairs. Sometimes if there were no patients in the trauma bay, we'd actually sit in an office and sign out and go over the list. So much more mellow kind of sign out. But in order to leave, sometimes you do have to tie things up. So you never leave at the 12-hour mark because that's when your change of shift comes. And there's no time to reflect on the day. You're just like, here's what's happening right now that you need to know. Not, oh, so-and-so died and this happened, this happened. There's no time to talk about it.
Well, we actually don't see that here either, right? It seems to be that the new shift is showing up and I guess they're just picking up the cases. But is this in one, I wonder when you were actually doing a similar job, if having that overlap kind of alleviates the stress. And did you feel like that here? Like it goes from, it's so packed, there's so many cases, we got to make it to the finish line. And then all of a sudden there's people just like grabbing your case out of your hand. And all of a sudden it's just like, oh, okay.
Yes, that's definitely what happens especially when we were in an area of the ER called prompt care, which is like one PA and all sort of non-emergent urgent care type stuff is waiting. And when you have 10 patients waiting to be seen and you're like desperately going and going and going, and then okay, these next 10 patients are not my problem. Let me breathe a sigh of relief. But you do have to stay and tie up some things, especially if you're, about to go sew up a laceration. You're not going to really sign that one out because that's mean. So there's some things you have to keep doing. But yes, it is a bit of relief to know that you're not on the hook.
Yeah, and this seems to be the case here that's very much showing, maybe not last season, we were seeing the very unrealistic reality that, of course, the second staff shows up just as there's this huge body count in the actual ER. And in this case, it's probably a more natural transition between one and the other. But another big thing that happens here, obviously, is that we see all this interpersonal strain that has been building up. And maybe because it's the end of the shift, and this is my follow-up question, is this type of stuff, the personal stuff, the stress, the drama of the day, like if a case really got to you, is it something that does allow itself to manifest here because it's almost like we've made it past the finish line? So now everything's going to start cracking. And the reason I mention that is because I just think about, from my perspective, I used to travel a lot for work. And it seemed to be like when I was working, even if I wasn't sleeping and I was in a different city and doing 8 different things that day and responding to what was happening, I was totally fine. And then I'd get home at the end of this chaotic week and I would like inevitably get sick or something. It's just like my body was so run down that I finally was allowing myself to be sick. So I wonder if it's a micro version of that in letting your guard down and then letting your guard down like the emotions come.
Yeah, I think it takes more than a sign out for your emotions to finally weigh on you. It happens in the evening or days later where you realize, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. So it does take some time, I think, for you to allow yourself to process.
So this is more like dramatic.
Yeah, a little more dramatic.
Just kind of like to kind of put so we can watch it basically instead of having them cry at home. Although we get to see people cry and scream and freak out here. Yes. And one of the biggest triggers here and one of the key figures in this whole entire episode is Dana's relay and Emma. And of course, we're picking up immediately after the events of last week. There's a code hula hoop.
Yes, we use more benign terminology. Not benign, but bland terminology in real life, like a code white, not a code hula hoop.
Well, it just seems like code white could be like it's so innocuous that it could.
But everyone knows what a code white is. Like,
yeah.
When you get your ID badge, when you first start, you get a little card that goes into your badge that tells you what all the codes mean. Code red, fire. Code white, emergency or a security situation. There's code purple, which used to be a medical emergency in a non-patient. So that could be a staff member or a family member. So everyone knows what that means. You hear a call overhead and you listen for the room. Especially, I don't work in the ER now. I'm roaming around the hospital all day. And they'll call codes overhead in a room. And then you look at your list real quick. Is that my patient? Because if it's your patient, you better start running over there. Especially in dialysis. When you get a code blue means there's a code happening. Like someone's not breathing, cardiac arrest, something along those lines. So that sometimes that happens in dialysis. And then I have to run up to dialysis because you don't know if your patient is in dialysis, because my patients are all in dialysis.
That's everybody for you. I wonder if how many hospitals are going to change the name to Hula Hoop. Hula Hoop.
I cannot imagine that happening.
So Dana has a rough week. So first of all, we do not see what happens inside the room. Emma's in a headlock, as we saw last week. Dana is keeping an eye on everybody, as we would expect, or as she should be doing, and immediately sees this, immediately flies in. Turns out she had, what did she have in her pocket?
She had Versed in her pocket, which is a sedative that you give. We give it for conscious sedation, but if you have a patient who's acting out violent, you can give them Versed. There's other sedatives you can give also, but she's apparently carrying around 4 milligrams of Versed, which is not something you're supposed to be carrying around, because if it's meant for a patient, you're supposed to get it for the patient under their name, administer it to them. And if you don't use it all, you have to waste, which she comments on. You have to waste it with a witness so that you're not obviously pocketing controlled substances.
So she says she was holding it for that purpose and just happened to have it. Wink.
Right. I just happened to have this. And then Robbie calls it out later on that she's been probably carrying around this syringe of Versed since she was beat up. Right. In case someone tries to assault her, she can get them.
Now, how do you give the Versed? Is this intramuscular? It's not intravenous, is it?
We usually give it IV. She obviously gave it to him IM. So you can give it.
And it would react that quickly? Because he seemed to be knocked out, or loopy at least.
Yeah, pretty quick acting. I got Versed before I had my appendix out. Like, they gave it to me in the holding area before I went back to the operating room. And after I got it, I remember nothing.
Apparently, this guy doesn't remember anything either. They say he slipped, and that's why he had his bloody nose. Emma says, you got me. I got you, girl. They both say that back and forth to each other. So it's like Emma's going to back her story, whatever it is. Emma's like, oh, it happened so fast. I don't know what happened. He must have slipped and bonked his nose.
I couldn't see. I was in a headlock.
For sure.
Well, we all know what Dana did, so.
Do you think she punched him in the face? Or
yes.
Do you think, yeah, probably.
I think she punched him in the face.
But she would have like a bruised hand or something, no? This girl knows how to throw a punch.
We haven't seen her hand.
Yeah. She took kickboxing classes after she's toughened up those knuckles after she got beat up last week. She got punched right in the face. So kind of a weird reversal here.
Gotta protect your friends.
So this guy, by the way, a real piece of crap, right? So he is, I would hope that if somehow, for whatever reasons, I came in there and I'm having some kind of like angry fit, and someone, even if I think someone punched me in the face, to restrain myself when I was injuring someone else, that you'd have some empathy to be like, well, these people were trying to help me in the first place. Instead of it being like, I'm going to sue you guys. This guy, I hope this guy ends up in jail, honestly.
Yeah, he was drinking and doing cocaine and became violent. And McKay explains like the actual reaction and the breakdown and how this happens, which doesn't help in any way because he's like, F you.
Although they are going to process it, they're going to book him now after this. So
for assault.
Right. And what the funniest thing about it is, like, she says, oh, you guys are covering your own. I'm just trying to play this out because I want to see this guy take a fall so bad. But what McKay says is absolutely true. Not only is it going to be like, these are like decorated medical providers that, probably have been involved with multiple high, well-known incidents like the one from last year. And they're going to take this douchey guy's word over theirs. But more important than that is this guy got brought into the hospital because he became violent and was attacking people on the golf course. So the idea of basically being like, he hurt people on the golf course, so he had to come to the hospital, and then he tried to injure one of the nurses. People are going to be like, yeah, 1 + 1 = 2, man. This is pretty basic stuff. Like, you're going to try to sue these people now who are trying to save your life? Yeah, good luck.
I can also say in my time in the ER, we had numerous inappropriate patients who are like punching nurses or doing things that you would never get away with in any other type of field. And no one ever got the police called on them. Like, nothing very terrible happened. No nurse got punched in the face and became a patient, but still punched, kicked, minor injuries, never reported. It's like you expect there to be terrible behavior and you just have to go with the flow.
Well, I mean, that's horrible to hear, but I mean, the irony in this circumstance is that he's like, take my handcuffs off. I'm going to sue you guys. I want the police officer to take my report. And they're like, that police officer's going to stay here because now that your blood work has come back, you're going to be booked after this, right? Not only for the assault,
you have
but for
illegal drugs.
The drug use. Exactly. Right. Exactly.
He's got no case.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is going to be. If anything, Emma can, sue him for assault, and I think she'd win in any kind of civil case, regardless of whether there's evidence or not of it. So Dana intervenes and Robbie reacts. And this is where what the episode really is about, by the way, which I find so fascinating and what makes it, at the time, it seemed pretty uneventful, but there's a lot of interesting character stuff. And then thinking about the episode after the fact, that a lot of the stuff that the show has been circling around thematically, this is like, you've seen some big themes of the show emerge in the last recent episodes about the connection these people need with each other and the stability that these people don't have sometimes, these people that they're trying to assist. And of course, the ACE agents and how that impedes medical practice and how this bureaucracy in general is problematic for the way this thing works. So there's been kind of like big themes that have kind of emerged in the most recent episodes. But one of them ones that's obviously been developed this whole entire season and is really comes to the fore here more than any other episode is exactly that point of how everybody can judge what Langdon did and judge what this person did and that. But all these people have significant interpersonal problems and they're dealing them in very unhealthy ways. And you see like Dana and Robbie is calling her out for, he wanted her to come back and then she did come back, even though she said she was done and she wasn't going to come back, only for him to call her out for the way she managed this particular situation. And I'm not saying that this was a good way for her to manage the situation, but what a hypocrite he's being, considering the situation he's in right now, where he's basically like fantasizing about suicide or something here, which is, obviously not healthy. And you think about how Santos is really angry at Langdon. And of course, she has every right to be angry, especially given the fact that he was there on her first day. And there's that aspect of it. But then she's managing her own stress in a very, very unhealthy way. We see her take a scalpel, presumably, given what we saw before. She's going to cut again. So my point is that everyone's dealing with these things very badly. McKay at one point is kind of trying to manage all these people, by the way. And she's been down this road. She knows. She warns Robbie, I knew people like you. She warns Langdon, it's tough to stay sober. I'm here if you need me. So she seems to have been, become the mama bear that Dana was supposed to be. But everybody's kind of at the end of their ropes here.
Yeah, they definitely are all sort of teetering on their own edges. And hopefully they can keep it all together. And Robbie is definitely concerning. I was concerned about Robbie when he turned his apartment over to, what's his name?
Whitaker.
Yes, Whitaker. I'm like, oh God, he may be on a mission to free himself because who gives their apartment up? But now it's just like, oh yeah, I'm going to go over there and water the plants. And that's about it.
Yeah. And he's making it sound when he talks to Santos about it, saying that I'm doing that so that he has something to do. He gets out of the apartment. So he's not in your way all the time. And also, like, he's not hanging out with the farmer wife all the time
Which
either.
he still very much is going to be. He's on the phone with her when
He's
he
literally
steps
telling her,
outside
I'm leaving. Yeah, exactly.
before that patient that came in who was like drowning in their own pulmonary secretions. He's on the phone making plans with this farm lady. So Robbie's obviously trying to pull him out of that situation, but Robbie can't be the father of all these people. So that case, by the way, was a little crazy.
Yeah, I want to talk about a few of the cases here this week, but before we get to that one, which I think is the most, spectacular one at least, but I wanted to circle back on one thing you just said, which is that Robbie can't be the parent to all these people. And Al-Hashimi says to him, I've been watching this. This is a dysfunctional family you have here. This is not running properly. And he takes it as a criticism.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, she goes, you guys need 2 attendings. You guys can't just do this with 1 attending all the time. And you have said this a whole bunch of times.
Attending. You need like 5 attendings.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to ask you. Is it anything realistic at all that they would have only 1 attending in this?
No, when I worked in the ER, we would have at least 6 attendings at a time. We didn't have residents though. So it was the attendings and the PAs, but there was only 2 attendings and 1 PA in an area. So I don't know how many beds. There was like 12 beds, maybe 12 to 15 beds in one area with 3 people. So you had a pod. So you had 6 nurses, 2 attendings, 1 PA in a pod times 3. And then you had another area of the ER that had a PA by themselves. So to have 1 attending and an ER with this volume obviously is not real. But it makes for good TV.
Right. But they also have the residents. So, I mean, I am curious if anybody out there works in a hospital. I'm sure there's many people who watch this show who are also work in hospitals as well. So anyone who's a nurse or a doctor in an ER that is maybe because they're short staffed. I've heard of even worse type of emergency room understaffing in more rural hospitals. And we also hear that one of the hospitals in the area has shut down in this particular show. So that's something that I guess they're trying to draw our attention to yet again. But in a pretty populous area like Pittsburgh, it seems like this would not be the case.
Yeah, what you have here is like one pod, whereas there's many other groups of people working. At my hospital, I don't know exactly how they staff it, but when I go down there to see a patient, I can sort of presume, because I see 5 residents and 2 attendings taking care of the red zone, which are people that are potentially having life-threatening problems. So that's one area. And then there's the amber zone and the yellow zone and the purple zone and the blue zone. So there's many different areas that are fully staffed.
Yeah, and mom and dad are fighting, of course, in this particular episode. And interesting that the way and when I say that, by the way, I'm not talking about Al-Hashimi. I'm talking about Dana and Robbie, who are the real moms and dads, these people around them, I'm sure. But I did like her throwing it in his face, being like, it's always do as I say, not as I do. With you, isn't it? And or do as I say, not as I do. I would have got a little Brooklyn there.
That was definitely Brooklyn. I think she's trying to pull off a Pittsburgh accent. I don't know. I'm not sure. Dana,
the actress, by the way, if you guys see the behind the scenes, and also there's a commercial that's promoting the EMT, but it's actually a car commercial for safe. But if you've heard her speak in her natural voice, she does not have this accent.
She speaks standard English.
But you've said this a bunch of times. Of course, they need more than one doctor here, minimally. You would want even more than that. But it was interesting to see Al-Hashimi being like, you guys need 2 attendings. And why is the staff this way? That's not Robbie's decision, I would assume. It's like Gloria or someone higher up who's staffing the emergency room. And also, what's interesting is that he takes it as an insult, that he is like, he can't manage this. I don't think the expectation is that you can manage this.
This is way more than one person can handle. No wonder he's having a breakdown.
And that interestingly parallels something else, which I called out when we were actually watching it, which is this situation where we saw that the doctor who's thinking about moving to New Jersey, her mom, Mohan, yes, where Dr. Mohan had been recommended for geriatrics back by Al-Hashimi, right? Speaking of a good cop, bad cop, or good mom, bad dad. And Al-Hashimi had meant it as a compliment, being like, oh, you're good with geriatric patients. You should think about that. And there's always openings for that. And then Robbie says the exact same thing to her. And she kind of smiles and nods her head like, I know, I heard that already. And he's just like, that's your speed.
Yeah.
It's like an insult.
It is. When you're trying to keep up with the busy ER and someone tells you to go into geriatrics, it's like that's a bit of a insult.
But that geriatric case is interesting because you have these people who are in denial. This is something that I was reading some reactions on social media, which I think is actually an interesting parallel. That elderly couple is a metaphor for the ER itself, the ER staff, where they're like, we got this under control. No, it's okay. We got it. And everybody's just like, this is not okay. Like, you guys are not managing this well. And they're like, no, it's fine. We got it. And it's like basically what they're doing internally is the same thing that this elderly couple's doing.
Yeah. And she calls out the medication interactions that are leading to his gait problem and such. So first of all, those 2 characters don't seem debilitated enough to like have an intervention by a physician and a family. Like, you can't live alone anymore. That seems a little much. I would hope they would be a bit more decrepit before they had an intervention. And yeah, the geriatrician does point out that we have some anticholinergic side effects with the meds that are giving him some trouble.
You mentioned the whole taking off your shoes off. That's what you do. Taking your shoes off so that you can check their gait, and how you've done that assessment before. So how did that play out?
I mean, I check their feet because they are vascular patients. So I need to feel their pulses. So I need to look at their feet and see what kind of wounds and nasty stuff we can find on the toes. So my purpose in examining a foot is much different than that. They were just doing some like neurologic tests where they didn't actually show it, but They said they were going to do the Romberg test where you stand up and you have to balance yourself with your eyes closed. You technically don't need to be barefoot for that, but they were doing probably other tests, neurologic tests as part of a neuro exam with the shoes off.
Well, she said you can see a lot about a patient just from looking at their feet, other than finding wounds on them.
Oh, your foot is falling off.
Or mummified toes or something like that, which you don't have a lot of experience with. But in general, what can you find? Like when you look at someone's feet, what do you know about the patient? Can you tell that they might have balance problems from the right there? No.
Not just from looking at their feet.
You'd have
like
to. They'd have to stand on their feet.
There's a neurologic test where you like take an object and swipe it up someone's foot to see what direction their toes are moving. That's, part of a neuro exam. That's what I was referring to before. But just looking at their feet, I mean, you can tell something about their hygiene and about how they take care of themselves if you look at their feet.
True.
Like my crazy cat lady whose toenails hadn't been cut in about 7 years, and they were like long and like digging down towards the floor. So that I'm like imagining
she
her
like
home
making this scratching sound when she walks, just like the cats.
like a dog. So yes, you can tell how well someone cares for themselves.
There was a great bit of dialogue here, and I felt this storyline in general was a little clunky, and bringing in the Mohan geriatric thing, which I guess at this point, bringing it up twice, I guess she's going to end up in geriatrics, I assume. But that was all a little on the nose or whatever. But I did really like this bit of dialogue, which was that every old person knows what it was like to be young, but not every young person knows what it's like to be old. So showing some empathy for your elders, which of course we all need to show some for those elders.
We will one day be them.
It's coming. It's so close now. I'm scared.
We still have time, Victor.
Barely. Do you know about that? About the rural hospital shutdowns? Is that something that is impacting you guys at all? Do you see any of that traffic coming to the larger hospitals like the one you work at? Or is this just something you hear about in your medical journals and stuff?
It's more something I hear about. I work at a big academic medical center, and we accept transfers from all over the place for higher level of care, in theory. But it's not because of rural hospital shutdowns. It could be, in part, the more rural hospitals that are 45 minutes west of us are not quite as well staffed, and they don't have as many physicians, possibly, but that's just a theory. I don't know much firsthand about rural hospitals closing. I grew up in rural Vermont, and we had a very tiny hospital that is like 30 beds in the whole hospital, as opposed to where I work, which is something like 1,000 beds. And my rural hospital growing up obviously could not handle any major emergency. So patients were constantly being transferred to Dartmouth-Hitchcock, Bay State in Massachusetts, where they had cardiac surgery, general surgery, and can take care of acute emergencies, which we couldn't do in the rural hospital. But my hospital that I grew up next to is still open.
Still kicking somehow. One more ironic element of the episode before we get into some of the cases and some of the smaller character interactions that I wanted to call out was I liked, again, these interesting parallels between characters that are not seeing their own behavior in the context of somebody else, Robbie being the obvious candidate or the most obvious one. But I like the fact that Al-Hashimi is trying to talk to him about the situation, and he keeps cutting her off. And she's like, this conversation is unfinished. And he just keeps breaking it off, does not want to have the conversation. And then, of course, he's hounding Dana at the same time, being like, Dana, we're not done with this conversation. So again, this irony that this is happening in a circle here.
Multiple levels.
Yeah. Okay, some of the cases now. So the first one is this. What was going on with this guy? He shows up with his son driving. He's like spewing.
Foaming at the mouth. Yeah.
This is a very cool effect. I don't even know how they did this. Like in the car, this stuff is just pouring out of him. I guess he could just get like some kind of like fizzy candy or something.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, but it was a lot of substance coming out. The grossest part, which must have been an actual practical effect beyond the just put something in your mouth and let it foam up, was when they were trying to get it out of his mouth, clear it out of his lungs, and it's just pouring out of the tube and everything. It's really disgusting.
Yes. So this man has end-stage renal disease. He's on dialysis, and he's missed his dialysis treatment because of the holiday or something. And the hospital closest to them is closed. Right. So he is in respiratory distress, and they drove him an hour and a half to get to Pittsburgh. So now he's literally so fluid overloaded that he's choking on his pulmonary secretions. Now, looking at that case scenario, I would have intubated that man immediately. He's already potentially aspirated his own lung secretions, and he's altered, and he is a complete mess. But they stabilize his airway without intubating him somehow. And then obviously this man needs emergent dialysis. His potassium is high, so that's one indication for emergent dialysis. His potassium was, I think, 6.2. So there's a treatment algorithm for hyperkalemia, which is elevated potassium. Alloshemi says, oh, let's give him albuterol right away, which is one of the treatments. When you breathe in this bronchodilator, it actually helps shift potassium into your cells. You can also give insulin, which shifts potassium into your cells, and then you have to give sugar because the insulin will make your blood sugar drop. So you give insulin, you give dextrose, you give calcium.
This sounds like the treatment for that guy last year who...
Yes, he had hyperkalemic periodic paralysis.
Yes.
Yes, so they treated him the same way. Only this guy, his kidneys don't work.
Yeah.
So the only way to really treat this is to do emergent dialysis. But instead of doing emergent dialysis, they decide to do phlebotomy. So they remove 500 cc's of his blood volume. Removing fluid is something you need to do.
You were so irritated by this. Like, this is preposterous. What is this? Dangerous liaisons? What's going on here?
I was like, oh my God, just call his nephrologist or any nephrologist and get the dialysis nurse in there right now. All you got to do is cannulate his fistula, put him on dialysis, pull fluid off of dialysis. But they're acting as if they don't have access to dialysis. So instead, they're going to bloodlet him to take volume off because that's what you do. You're volume overloaded. So they did it with a blood draw instead of dialysis. And he was like, awake and okay.
It's fine. It's all fine. All those dialysis patients, all they got to do.
Yeah, next time someone calls me when someone's fistula isn't working to put in a dialysis catheter, which is something that is one of my job functions, I'll be like, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. You just need to bloodlet him.
Just bloodlet him.
They'd be like, huh? Kim's lost her mind.
And that's probably heat related, at least partially. More related to the holiday specifically, we have two pretty entertaining cases, especially one which is pretty traumatic, but at least it seems to have not gone too badly. But it is this fireworks explosion. This guy's in his garage. He's actually a professional, so it's not just him screwing around. They think him and his brother were just messing around. But apparently and it has scalped him and his brother's freaking out. But it's interesting to see the outcome here. But of course, again, a very cool effect. But the most interesting thing that happens here, well, a couple interesting things. One is you see Perla take the brother and manage him. He pushes him out into the common area, gets him to breathe, which, I mean, his breathing's great. Actually, to calm yourself for sure. In this particular case, seems like pretty minor, distraction given how agitated he must be seeing his brother this way. But it was just interesting to see her actually leave the operating room here in this moment. But the most entertaining aspect of this for me was definitely when Joy is stapling the scalp and she misses, just no big deal. She just puts a staple in the wrong place and she says, oops. The patient starts to freak out immediately. And they're like, never say oops in front of a patient.
That is true. I have said oops in front of a patient, I'm sure.
Have you ever been called out for saying oops in front of a patient?
Probably in my earlier career. I just don't recall.
The entertaining side of things, this one, just a sight gag. This woman in her red, white, and blue bikini, completely sunburned from head to toe, saying that she's just so angry at herself. I mean, must have fallen asleep in the sun. And oh my God. I remember, by the way, I have never been at that age, have never been sunburned this badly or whatever. But I remember sometimes we were kids and they would our neighbor, she would never wear sunscreen. This is when we were younger. And she would just play in the sun all day long. And at night, when it would reveal itself, she was red like a tomato. And I was just like, oh my God, the amount of pain this person's going to be in.
Yeah. 3rd degree sunburns are just horrific. And yes, that was very dramatic. But don't you think she would have put some clothes on?
Could you imagine how painful
how about
you
a
would?
Hospital gown?
Well, I mean, of course, we had to see it. And I'm sure, by the way, on the one hand, of course, we needed to see it because that's the sight gag. But on the other part, you can imagine this is like the guy who branded himself and you want to see the video, or the girl who stabbed herself in the fork. That whatever they're like, hold on a second. Don't put the gown on yet. I'll be right back.
Quick video of that, please.
Yes. Another little throwaway, which was a lot of fun, I had to say, was Langdon, who didn't have tons to do in this episode other than, I mean, he gives some good advice a couple of times, but, things have mellowed out. He still obviously is not getting along with Garcia, but I loved seeing him see these guys come in who do the Civil War recreations or the Revolutionary War recreations at the local fort. And he was like, oh man, he's like a little
so
kid.
Excited. And this guy was like accidentally bayoneted in the shoulder.
Oh, we could talk about what happens at the very last moment, which of course we knew was going to happen, but we'll save that just for the end of the conversation. One of our patients has, of course, come back. A couple of more interesting details. Javati, a couple things happened there. One is she's very excited to see her crush from last year come in as in the shift change. And he's talking about how things are on the other shift. So maybe, things don't have to be this way necessarily.
I forgot. It feels so long ago.
Yeah.
That they had any interaction before now.
And also very interesting to see Monica, this old school woman who was there. And interesting how the politics in this show are like very subtly delineated here, because we have all had experiences in our lives when, you're with somebody who is playing along with probably like the tone of the political leanings of the average person around them, but they have a very different political leaning. And this old school nurse, Monica, who's there, Dana's friend, who's been very helpful in this kind of analog world, being, first of all, feeling very askance looking at Javati, like, how old are you? Should you be in medicine? Calls her a snowflake. And you can't help but just the way that actress is performing this, that there's some racial aspect to it. She was also very buddy-buddy with the ICE agents last week. There's an interesting dynamic there. But of course, she's very good when they need her to be there. And that's what matters the most.
She's the only one who can function in the non-EMR world.
She's an old pro. So yeah, we're worried about everybody here. Worried about Robbie. McKay's worried about Robbie. She says that she knew people like him in her previous life, supposedly when she was an addict of some kind.
And they do have a nice conversation where she gives him a piece of advice and he takes it and immediately walks away.
Yeah. And she's not, he's not willing to, I mean, he basically, she just tells him exactly that in my previous life, I knew people who like to walk up to the edge. Yes. But sometimes you can cross, and basically I'm getting those vibes from you.
Yeah. If he doesn't really want that advice, walks away. Right.
And he doesn't like taking criticism, by the way, which is a big problem of his. And you see it here again. Everybody is trying to help him out. We see McKay trying to be helpful here, of course. But Dana calls him out too. What is wrong with you today? Something is wrong with you. It is interesting, though, that he's calling her out. And maybe this is like a self-critique because he sees aspects of himself in her. And he's not saying, I'm going to throw you under the bus because you had the, what is it called? Versed? No. Mm-hmm. Yep. In your pocket. I'll write it.
I'll sign off on it.
I'll write the prescription to cover you. He's just making a very valid point that it's just like this behavior is problematic. You're walking around waiting for something bad to happen. But of course, doctor, literally, heal thyself, right? This is a criticism that he is refusing to hear about himself.
Yeah. And Dana puts it right back at him in that conversation.
What as I say? No.
Yeah.
And his story is pretty much wrapped up. He's going to hang around. Some people, Joy, she's like, I'm out of here, guys.
And she made a good comment about how you people need to learn how to set boundaries. Yeah. Sometimes it's not about boundaries. It's just about getting through the last patient you saw so you can get out. But he's encouraging this medical student, oh, you should stay. There's still stuff going on. Sure, if you're going to go into ER medicine, stay late, make a good impression, get more experience. This woman's clearly not going to be an ER physician, and she's already announced it. She's just like, this is the problem that you guys have.
Right.
There are no boundaries. I am walking away, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Right. Which is the healthiest thing you could do. And but of course, if you do this on a regular basis, it's harder to do because you're going to see these patients again inevitably at some point in the future.
And then the last patient who rolls in to tie up the episode is the gentleman with diabetes.
Yes.
From previous episodes who couldn't afford medical care, was uninsured. They wanted to admit him because he still had acids in the bloodstream from his DKA. He's like, you're taking meals away from my family. So he leaves, and now he has fallen and is, I think, on a ventilator. Comes in with a collar on a vent because he fell And now he's potentially very badly hurt.
Carla.
Which is also a reality in patients who can't get the care they need. The dramatic version of it, but people don't get the care they need, end up having some catastrophic complication eventually.
Well, I mean, you've had cases like that, just that you've shared with me, exactly that, where you have a patient who discharges early or is antagonistic or is refusing to take their meds, and you know that they're not going to be on their meds when they go home, and then they inevitably show back up again.
Yeah, sometimes you can't talk sense into people. A patient of ours was annoyed that he was in the ER hallway for 10 hours. He was admitted to the hospital. There's no beds because it's chaos time. And he decided to sign himself out against medical advice. And then his daughter called our office, and I called her back. And as I'm talking to her, I realized that his blood cultures just came back positive from the previous day, meaning he has bacteria in his bloodstream. I'm like, oh God, you have to get your dad back here right away. We need to treat him and figure out what this bacteria is, because we had just put a stent inside of his aorta and we didn't want the stent to get seated. And she's like, I can't talk him into it. I'm like, he could potentially die. You're going to have to talk him into it. Can I talk to him? She's like, oh no, he's in the bathroom. But I'm like, okay, you've got to get this man back here. And we did. We actually pulled strings to get him directly admitted to the hospital, so he didn't have to wait in the ER, because he did not want to wait in the ER. So some patients are hard to help. You have to be persistent.
You got to be a social worker as well, unfortunately.
That is one of my job titles, turns out.
What else do we see here? Duke is going up for a CT scan finally. And that's what I was going to actually finish, that we see part of the reason that Robbie's going to hang around. He's like, I'm going to hang around here until you're out of CT. So I'm sure that we'll get the results next week, and then they'll be talking, and then Dana will be wrapping up her day, and maybe they'll still be arguing. Alshimi will be talking as well. Oh, another important point is that it looks like the cybersecurity team is confident that they can
get them back online,
deter the attack, because they haven't been attacked. They've been just preemptively waiting to make sure they don't get attacked, to protect the network and the records within it. So they feel like they're ready to go, and they're going to go back online. At this point, it'll be like just when the next shift is probably starting. Oh, but then that's another thing is going to be a delay, right? They're talking about now we got to take all these analog records and feed them into the system. So
I know, and Robbie wants the residents to do that.
Yeah, is that crazy?
No, please. There's got to be
let them go home.
There's got to be clerks for that.
So yeah, that's most of the episode. There was one more thing I wanted to bring up, and I can't remember off the top of my head now. So if you can't think of anything else, I think we'll stop there. If we missed anything, we'll discuss it next week. But we're getting close to the end. 3 more episodes. Do you think anything crazy is going to happen? I mean, maybe they set us up for something like that, and we're not going to have some kind of crazy, chaotic last 3 episodes at this point, I would presume.
I would presume we're not going to have a major catastrophe. We already have like personality catastrophes. So
yes,
I don't think we need anything else besides the routine stuff that's already going on, with a little bit more of, what's happening between the characters. So I don't think that's going to be a major meltdown point.
This was not the thing I was thinking of, but I did want to call out a couple of interpersonal things that just came to mind. One of them is, loved seeing Whitaker after Robbie being like, don't worry, I'm going to get him out of your hair. And then talking to Santos and his realization, like, oh, you like me living with you. And honestly, given she's going to have extracurricular activities today, which might include cutting herself, maybe she needs to have someone there to.
Yeah, Whitaker's got to go home. She's got to admit to him that she likes having a roommate so she doesn't hurt herself.
For sure. It probably helps her having someone there, because she has demons, obviously, as all these folks do. And the other fun detail that now slipped my mind. The other fun detail was an interaction between Garcia and Robbie, where they're with a patient. And I forgot exactly the circumstances, but Robbie's made a good choice, and they're like kind of bantering back and forth. And she says, you're going to make a good ex-husband one day.
Yeah, that was a good line. The other line that I also chuckled at was when Santos referred to Dr. Al-Hashimi as like Dr. Robot, which is a perfect description of her. She doesn't seem to have a warm and fuzzy personality or an angry personality or any sort of like interesting personality. She's like, here is what we are going to do today. I do not like the way you run your ER.
She's flirted with Robbie a couple of times, though, including this week,
yes, I suppose.
which is the surprising aspect of it because she's so.
Robots can flirt too.
If they're programmed to. All right. So we will reconvene next week. We have just 3 more episodes to go. I don't know if we're going to be able to record when we're on vacation. Figure that out. We can record later. So we maybe do another late episode. Anyway, I'll update everybody out there on our recording schedule given the vacation.
We could also have an impromptu podcast with my friend Brian, whose house we are staying at.
That could be very interesting.
Good. Brian, if you're listening, think of something to talk about with Victor.
Well, we should talk about the shows we've been watching. Given that that's what our
coverage is. Some of your Patreon content.
We could. The Patreon. Maybe. Yeah, music. He's into music. Anyway, I'll keep everybody up to date on those, on the schedule there. It's probably going to be moved around a little bit while we're on vacation, but we will be talking about DTF St. Louis. That'll be published at the regular time. And of course, the season finale of Paradise, which has our most recent episode of Paradise, the podcast episode, has been blowing up, people. So I guess a lot of people have been catching up on that show in the past week or so.
I haven't seen it yet.
You haven't seen any of it, but you can start watching season 1. Give it a shot. A lot of people like it.
That's where I'm going right now.
It's a little goofy, but entertaining. All right. Thanks again for the conversation, Kim.
You're welcome.
And thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you next week.